We're often told that learning, real learning, comes from listening hard or reading carefully. You know,
Yeah.
we spend years uh, basically soaking up information in classrooms through spoken words, written texts, lectures, books, discussions. It's nearly all verbal. But what if that's not actually how our brains lock in knowledge, the kind you can really use? What if the brain's true language isn't words?
Today, we're doing a deep dive into a perspective that honestly turns that idea on its head. Our source is Object Language, the brain's true medium of learning by Shiva Narayan Takshila Page, and it offers a pretty radical view on how your brain genuinely absorbs and applies what it learns. It's quite something.
It really is, yeah. In this deep dive, we're going to explore why just using traditional human language in teaching, why it often falls short, especially for deep understanding, remembering things long term, and crucially, actually doing something with the knowledge. We'll unpack what this object language is, how it works as the brain's, well, real learning medium, and how it creates something the source calls brain pages. Right. And for you listening, this isn't just abstract theory. The mission here is to shed light on the science of how you truly learn, and maybe how our education systems could be redesigned to actually transfer knowledge effectively. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah.
So let's start with that puzzle. It's something many of us feel, right? We spend all this time in school, drowning in verbal instruction, but then when it comes to actually applying that knowledge, students often struggle. It really feels like there's a fundamental mismatch between how we teach and how we learn, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. A huge disconnect. And the source really zeroes in on this. When we talk about human language for learning, we mean, spoken words, written text, the explanations teachers give, the usual classroom stuff. And it's fantastic for communication, no doubt, sharing ideas quickly. But, and this is the key insight, it's limited. As the only way to encode knowledge, the brain just doesn't work like that. It doesn't store lessons as sentences.
Okay, so if it's not filing away sentences from a lecture,
Yeah.
what is the brain's true medium? What is this object language?
Well, object language is the brain's natural method for encoding knowledge through direct interaction. Think symbols, diagrams, procedures, physical actions, understanding how things relate in space or time. So when learners are messing with tools, doing experiments, working through equations, exploring environments, they're using object interaction. And that interaction is what rewires the brain. It builds procedural knowledge, the how-to and conceptual knowledge, the why. The source argues, pretty convincingly, I think, that knowledge transfer is basically action-based. Object-driven.
Wow. So it's not just a slight difference. It's teaching is done in human language, but learning happens in object language. That's a huge distinction.
It changes everything.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. How does the brain actually do this? How does it process and store knowledge using object language? Because, like you said, it's not just saving a text file in there.
Exactly. No text files. Instead, the brain creates what the source terms brain pages. Think of them as dynamic neural maps. Modules, built and refined through repeated object interactions. These brain pages are what let you perform tasks, solve problems, and this is vital transfer what you know to new situations. They're like the brain's own executable code for information, so you can actually do something with it.
Huh?
And the pathway, according to this research, is pretty clear. Human language is the input, maybe, but it needs to lead to object interaction. That interaction then creates the brain page. And this really highlights the role of motor science, movement, action. It's central to building long-term memory and problem-solving skills. It's not passive listening, it's active doing.
Let's make this more concrete. The source gives some great examples that really make this idea click. Like learning to ride a bike, right?
Mm-hmm.
No amount of someone telling you how to balance or pedal actually teaches you. You learn by doing it, by the motor actions, the trying, maybe falling. That physical stuff is what actually rewires your brain, creates those brain pages. It's physical encoding.
Exactly.
Or think about mastering a math problem, a complex one. You don't get it just by hearing the teacher explain it. You master it by actually solving equations step by step, applying the rules, doing the practice.
The action itself is key.
Even if it's just on paper. And think about a mechanic, a bike mechanic. They're constantly using object language, interacting with tools, procedures, the bike itself. They aren't just reading a manual, they're physically engaged, building those functional brain pages through action.
And there's solid neuroscience behind this. It's not just, a nice idea. Studies show motor circuits, sensory feedback, what you feel and see as you act, and visuospatial processing are central. Specific brain areas are heavily involved. The motor cortex for movement, the cerebellum for coordination, basal ganglia for habits, hippocampal networks for memory. They're all working together to turn these experiences into those usable brain page maps. It really underlines why object language is primary.
The implications, they're just huge, aren't they? For you listening, for how we even structure education. This isn't just a minor tweak. It suggests we need a fundamental rethink. So what does this mean for schools today?
Well, it means that systems relying mostly on human language, they produce fragile learning, often short-term. Because words alone, they aren't stored in a way the brain can immediately execute. Without the object interaction piece, knowledge stays abstract, theoretical, kind of useless in the real world, like knowing the theory of swimming without ever getting wet.
Right, and the study doesn't just point out the problem, it offers a solution framework. System learnography, you said.
That's right, system learnography. It's proposed as the practical roadmap, and it outlines some critical shifts needed in education. First, redesigning classroom knowledge transfer, moving from passive lectures to what they call brain page classrooms, classrooms that emphasize object interaction, practice active doing for much deeper learning.
So less sitting and listening, more.
Hmm.
Building, experimenting, problem solving. That sounds radically different for a lot of schools.
It is. It's shifting from just consuming information to actively constructing knowledge. Second, a big one, integrating motor science. Since knowledge transfer relies on motor circuits, education needs to prioritize hands-on stuff. Task execution, real-world problem solving. It's about working with the brain's natural processes, not against them.
But hang on, human language still has a role, surely, to explain why you're doing something, or give context. It can't be only hands-on.
Oh, absolutely. Good point. Human language is vital for context, abstract ideas, reflection, explaining the theory behind the practice. The argument isn't to get rid of it, but to see it as the bridge. It translates the concepts into the object interactions that build the brain pages. It enables the core learning process. It isn't the process itself.
Okay, that makes sense. The bridge, not the destination.
Exactly. Which leads to the third point. Curriculum development. Curricula need rethinking to embed these object language formats. Things like diagrams, models, procedures, tasks, simulations. Make them central to learning, not just add-ons. This ensures learners are building those durable brain page maps, not just memorizing vocabulary lists.
And assessment must change too then. If the learning method changes, what about testing?
Right. Fourth point, assessment practices. We need to move beyond just verbal recall tests. They don't show if knowledge is functional. The study even mentions brain page hours, tracking time spent in active object interaction as a measure of learning. Assessments need to check if learners can apply knowledge in object language. Can they perform the task? Solve the problem. That's the real test.
Okay.
Fifth, the teacher's role shifts from being the main source of verbal information to becoming a knowledge moderator, guiding students in that translation process, turning words and concepts into practical object-based brain pages. It puts more responsibility on the learner, too, in a good way.
More of a facilitator.
Precisely. And finally, number 6, technology and learnography. We can use modern tech simulations, interactive apps, virtual labs to really boost these object-based learning experiences, make them more powerful, more accessible.
It really does sound like a complete paradigm shift is needed. It's about rethinking education from the ground up to give people lasting knowledge, skills they can actually use, and maybe even boost creativity instead of just abstract facts that fade away.
That's the goal, preparing people for the complexity of the real world.
So let's wrap this up. The core takeaway for you, listening. Real learning, the kind that sticks and works, isn't just about passively absorbing words. It's about getting your hands dirty, active engagement, direct interaction with objects, concepts, procedures, and letting your brain build those brain pages. It's an active process. You have to do it.
And the call to action from the source is clear. Schools, educators, policymakers need to recognize object language as the fundamental medium of learning. We need to design systems that prioritize active practice, performing tasks, and deliberately building those brain pages. That's what equips learners to actually succeed outside the classroom.
So here's a final thought to chew on. If knowledge really takes root through action and object interaction, how might you rethink your own learning? Whether it's a new skill, a language, prepping for something complex. Could embracing this object language idea, maybe doing more, reading about it less, unlock deeper understanding and application for you? Something to consider.
Definitely.
We really encourage you to look more into brain page theory, motor science, and this whole concept of knowledge transfer and system learnography. Fascinating stuff.